Good morning. How's everyone doing? Did anyone else uncomfortable yet? Anyone want to trade places with me today? You'll understand why we asked if you have children's church age children to go ahead and send them. Today's topic is obviously a very serious one. And it is very serious because we are facing an epidemic of staggering proportions, which I will go into in just a moment. Before we do so, however, there is no scientific knowledge against the fact that I know of that we can be, as humans, addicted to just about anything. It can be shopping, it can be food, it can be power, it can be money, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be video games, it can be sports, it can be working out. And an addiction to those things is not good because an addiction to something controls you. Excuse me. And yet, what we're talking about today is essentially a drug that makes billions of dollars per year, that tears spouses apart from each other, that tears children away from their parents, which instigates violence, which creates objects out of people, which contributes to modern slavery, which works in the sex trafficking industry. And it is available to anyone at any time, at any place. There is no war against it. There is very little, if any, regulation of it. There's very little national outrage against it. And it cannot be escaped if we are going to live in our modern culture. This is something we have to deal with and talk about and handle. This is pornography. And I will be stepping on toes today, and I will probably be irritating some people today, and I will probably be making some people worried today. I can promise you, though, that you are not alone. The statistics themselves bear that out. Excuse me. Speaking of statistics, there is a porn website that each year releases on an annual basis its usage statistics. They track everything that their servers send out. They track where it goes, what it is, what it's about, who's watching it. They divide it by country, they divide it by state, they divide it by day of the year. They track it all. And this is one site. These are statistics for one site. In 2015, they sent out 1,892 petabytes of information. Now, if you're not particularly computer savvy, you may be wondering, well, what in the world is a petabyte? You've heard of a megabyte, right? Average, normal computer will have 500 to 750 megabytes on a hard drive, or gigabytes on a hard drive, sorry. 1,000 megabytes is 1 gigabyte. On your average computer, you'll have about 500 gigabytes on a hard drive, just for reference. 1,000 gigabytes is 1 terabyte. 1,000 terabytes is 1 petabyte. I recently bought an external hard drive so that we can back up our services and my sermons. It has 4 terabytes on it. 4 terabytes. By my estimations, it will hold 2 or 3 years of sermons and worship services. It takes 1,000 terabytes for 1 petabyte, and one site released 1,892 petabytes of pornography last year. That equates to streaming 75 gigabytes per second. So that hard drive in your computer, you're filled up in 10 seconds or less. You don't even have Windows. Just pornography. No, it's not even an estimate. They streamed, let me get this number right, 4,392,486,580 hours of pornography from one site. To put that into a more understandable, quasi-understandable form, that's about 500,000 years worth of streaming information in 1 year. In 1 year, from one site, people across the world have watched 500,000 years worth of pornography. In the United States, 23% of their viewers were women, 77% were men. This last one is probably, at least for me, the most frightening statistic of all. 12% of their traffic came from tablets, so like your iPad. 25% of their traffic came from desktop and laptop computers, so the normal computer you have in your house. A full 63% of their traffic came from a smartphone. So we're looking at over 1,000 petabytes of pornography coming through people's smartphones. Do we understand that this is a problem? Every major study that I have been able to find says that among Christians, at least one out of every two men will watch pornography at some point during the month. In all likelihood, I would probably bet my next 2 weeks' salary on the fact that there are people sitting in this room who have watched pornography this week, if not last night. This is the world that we live in. And this is a problem that we must address in the church. We read this last week where Jesus says in Matthew 5:27, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery,' but I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell." According to Jesus, to look at another woman to lust at her, to look at another person to lust towards him, is committing adultery for those of us who are married. By extension, it is committing fornication, is being sexually immoral if you're not married. And there are adulterers and there are fornicators sitting in this room right now, today. And believe me when I say I understand how harsh that sounds. But this is a harsh subject and it requires truth. The good news is, because there is good news here, the good news is that God is greater. And that God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to come live on this earth and die for our sins and be raised again so that we could be continually washed in the cleansing power of his blood, to have our sins forgiven so that we could walk with him again. That's the good news. The tough part is that sometimes this requires extreme action if we're going to walk his path. Jesus said, we could just as easily say, since the statistics say, from this site, 63% of their traffic comes from smartphones, that if this is a problem for you, it is better to take your phone and cast it from you. It has a case, it's fine. Scared you there. He threw his smartphone. What if it breaks? I have a dumb phone at home if I need it. Thanks. It's fine. You see my point? My life would not end if I took a hammer to my smartphone. It would go on. If this is an issue, it is worth taking extreme action against. And if that means getting a dumb phone, then get a dumb phone. Because chances are that's a smarter option. And do not think for 1 second that you are immune. No one is immune. No one. Sexual immorality does not care about age, it does not care about race, it does not care about economic status, it does not care about whether you're male or female, it doesn't care if you're a child. Bill Perkins wisely said that if you think you can't fall into sexual sin, then you are godlier than David, you are stronger than Samson, you are wiser than Solomon. Anyone here want to raise their hand and say, you top them on those categories? We need to understand that we are not immune. Because if we believe, if we act like we are, that's when we're in trouble. That's when we're in the most trouble. And we are called to think on better things. In our scripture reading, we read Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9, where Paul writes, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do. And the God of peace will be with you." Pornography is the exact opposite of everything in this list. It lies, it steals, it cheats, it abuses, it neglects, and it does not care. Did some disturbing research for this one in case you don't know. Had to read some disturbing stories. Stories of cameramen walking out of the set while a girl laid curled up in the fetal position, naked and bawling her eyes out because her mind could not comprehend what her body had just been put through. More than once of girls going into a shoot expecting one thing and finding that it was something completely different. And if they walked out, the company was going to sue her for backing out of contract. This is an industry that takes advantage of the weak, it takes advantage of the abused, it takes advantage of anyone it can get its claws into. And there is nothing noble or just or pure or lovely or good or virtuous or praiseworthy about it. And if we are called to think on these things that Paul writes, then by extension, we cannot give our focus to that which is the opposite of it. Don't get me wrong. The porn industry spends hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to put forth the image that it's good, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it, there's no harm in it, everyone does it, it's funny, it's just something people do. Oh, they're just a teenager. Oh, he's just lonely. Oh, he's having problems with his marriage. They need release. That's what we're told. We're told it by the industry itself. We're told it by people in government. We're told it by our sitcoms. We're told it by our music. We're told it by the internet. And if it's on the internet, it must be true. Isaiah, through the power of God, in chapter 5, verse 20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." He says, woe to them. I don't know that we have a sense of woe in our society. This is called, for lack of a better way for me to explain it, in a quick and short way, it's calling a curse upon people who do this. Cursed are those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Curse them. And that is the society that we live in today. We cannot treat this like it is no big deal. We can't. Because if we do, we will lose. You will lose. And your children will lose. But how? How do we fight back against it? There's literally an onslaught of millions of sites and more every day. It's on TV, it's in our music, it's in our books, it's on the computer, it's on movies. How in the world do we fight back? I believe the first step is to realize that it is a problem. That it is a problem with people sitting here, that it is a problem with people in our families, and that we will get nowhere if we act and pretend like it is not. Because if we turn a blind eye and we hide away and we put our head in the sand and say, I don't want to know, I don't need to see it, I don't need to worry about it, then we're giving up the war before it's even been fought. Secondly, we need to talk with our families about it, and we need to become accountable to people that we trust. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about confession? This is a subject that is ripe for confession. And I wager say this is a subject that many in this room need to confess, whether privately, whether to God, or whether to people who can help hold them accountable, who they can be honest with. And we must, this is not optional. We must take back control of our technology. Are you not good with it? Do you have trouble with computers? Ask me. I'll get you fixed up. I'm good with computers. Get help. And get help making it so your technology cannot access it. 63%. 63%. Plus your laptop and desktop and tablet and everything else. If it can be accessed, if it can access the internet, it can access porn. I saw another interesting statistic later on after I'd already written this. Video game systems, Xbox, Xbox One, PS3, PS4, PS Vita, PSP, 3DS. If it can access the internet, it can access porn. And it's a growing market share. Because, oh, it's a game system. No one suspects the game system. Get control of your technology, because there is no excuse not to. There are parental controls. There are programs such as NetNanny, WebWatcher, Covenant Eyes, many others. Some are free, some cost around $100. Any cost is worth it. I don't care if it costs $3,000, find a way to pay for it. Jesus says if you had to cut off your hand and pull out your eye, do it. And there are programs out there for nominal costs that can protect you, and that can especially protect your children. Because I speak from personal conversations that age is dropping rapidly, where children encounter pornography. We must pull our families towards God and give no room for it to enter. It's not for nothing that one of the best pieces of advice is people saying have the computer in a family room, public room. Perhaps it would not be unwise for us to have phones only in public spaces, or not have smartphones. Sorry, teenagers, it's true. Sorry, techno geeks, if you're like me, it's true. Excuse me. In our world today, we really can't do business without internet. Let's just face it. If you're in business, if you work for someone, chances are you have to have some sort of access to the internet. Whether it's for email, making bids, whatever. But we can still take control of our technology for the glory of God. We need this, and we need it now. I have been loud, I have been brash, I have been harsh in some instances. Please believe me when I say that every single thing that I have said here, I say out of love, and I say out of care for each and every person sitting in these chairs. And for anyone who happens to watch online. We must start working on this today. To fail to do so is to put our heads in the sand, is to put our souls at risk, it is to put our families on the chopping block, it is to put our children's souls at risk. And there is no excuse for it. Let us be better. Let us be stronger. And let us be forgiven, because God is greater. This is not a sermon to just make you feel bad and stomp you down and put you in your place. That's not the point. It's okay, you can laugh. Let's get it out. We need some humor in this one, trust me. The goal is, while not being to grind people down, it is to cut you open. Because we need to be cut open. And it is my hope and it is my prayer that if you have an issue, if you face this, if you have faced this in the past, then get with someone and get accountable. Because if it hasn't bothered you in a while, it will bother you again. And if you're sitting here saying, oh, this doesn't really apply to me, I don't have that issue, get ready, because it will. We sing a song. The words say, grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all my sin. And it's true. Because God's grace is greater, God's love is greater, Christ's sacrifice is greater. And when we turn to Him and we walk with Him, even when we mess up, even when we fail, even when everything falls apart, He's there. And He calls us to Him still. So regardless of where you're at, regardless of where you are, the time for change is now. The time for taking control of your technology is now. The time for making extreme actions is now. Because if you wait, it won't happen. So I want to encourage you. I want to strongly encourage you to turn back to Jesus, to fill your life with Him, to reject the false gods that give nothing and only take. So that we can be His and walk with Him again. Because He calls us to do it now. So let's do it while we stand and while we sing.